Attention sports teams. Let us introduce you to the best fan engagement tool in the game, .vote. By getting a .vote web address for your team, you can allow fans to engage and interact with big-time decisions. In a single click, not only can fans make their opinions heard, but sports teams get a better understanding of their fans' interests. Keep your fans engaged. Simply visit GoDaddy.com today, type in the desired name of your web address, and let the voting begin.
There are plenty of hot seats everywhere you look these days in New York sports. The Yankees are on the brink. We'll tackle that, plus why a wrestling catchphrase from the 80s is notable in 2025, and the team that has made me a fan of college football for the first time in my life, and it is definitely not who you think it is. It's all straight ahead on a fresh episode of Gordon Damer on Sports. Welcome into a fresh episode of Gordon Damer on Sports, episode number 46. How is everybody feeling? How is everybody doing after a busy sports weekend, which was not good for most of the New York teams? You know, I like to use this podcast to talk about the New York sports that I love, but also to dive into some other topics that fascinate me, but don't get nearly the attention that maybe they should, that don't fit into the neat box of, you know, Mets, Jets, Yankees, Mets, all that type of stuff. And we got a wide range of topics for today's episode. But before we get started, the only thing I care about is that you hit that subscribe button, no matter what platform that you're listening to or watching the podcast on YouTube. And if you can share it with a friend, that would not be too shabby either. All right, let's get into it, because first things first, you know, you can learn a lot by watching pro wrestling. Now, I'm not talking about the matches or the moves per se, but the characters and the stories that they tell. I used to be as a kid, huge wrestling fan. And at its best, pro wrestling has always kind of held up a mirror to real life. It might be exaggerated and it's over the top, but it's true in many ways that matter most. And in the history of pro wrestling, there have been many great catchphrases. Ric Flair, to be the man, you gotta beat the man, right? To be the champion, you got to beat the champion. Generally, he was the champion. Stone Cold Steve Austin, that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so. Roddy Piper, just when you think you have the answers, I change the questions. There's been tons of them. You could go on for hours just quoting the best ones. But to me, no wrestling catchphrase has had a longer shelf life or been more true than the one from Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, which of course was, everybody's got a price. Everybody's got a price. That one is universal. It is timeless. And it was introduced, in the 80s? And 40 years later, it still works perfectly. And it fit him perfectly for the character that he was playing, the guy who could buy his way into or out of anything. But more than that, it's the best wrestling catchphrase to me of all time, because like any joke, you have to have a little bit of truth. It has to be true. And there may be no better way for a modern day example of that than what is happening right now with the LIV Golf Tour. Remember LIV Golf? Remember them? I have noticed a lot of stories in the last week about the amount of money that LIV Golf is paying out, is losing tons of money. And it is a stunning amount of money that they are losing. When you take a look at it, and it really is staggering. So to give you a little perspective, in case you have not been paying attention, and based on some of the numbers you've not been, LIV Golf's UK operation, that's the entity that runs all the properties and the operations outside of the United States. They lost $590 million in 2024, more than $500 million, but also part of a trend. Follows losses of $496 million in 2023, $306 million in 2022. So you do the math, right? The trend line is going up of how much money they're losing. LIV has burned through $1.4 billion in just its first 3.5 years. And that's only the non-U.S. business. When you add in the American side of things, Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, the PIF, has poured more than $5 billion into the league since 2021. Now, you might be saying, well, sure, they've spent a lot of money, but you got to spend money to make money, right? Especially something like a golf tour, right? That can't be cheap. How much are they making? Interesting that you ask, because the revenues, those have been terrible. LIV has brought in just $82 million outside of the U.S. last year, while paying out $700 million in costs. You don't need to be Warren Buffett. We brought in 82, we spent 700. Really, really bad. Now you might be saying, well, what about the broadcasting rights? That's usually where that's where the rubber hits the road. That's where the real money is made. Well, the broadcasting rights outside of America, also terrible. $3.5 million. So nobody is paying to watch this. And just to kind of give you a comparison, is 3.5 a lot? No. Compared to the PGA Tour, they get $700 million from their television partners. Now, you might be saying, LIV just started. All the numbers are really, really bad. And the thing is that LIV continues to hand out these enormous sums of money to its players. Across 4 seasons, 96 golfers have earned $1.4 billion in prize money. That works out to be about $14.7 million per golfer. And that doesn't include the signing bonuses. Each of these guys to sign with the LIV Tour, they took these huge paychecks to join this tour. That's part of the backlash that they faced. John Rahm, for example, he made $75 million in prize money since joining LIV in 2024. But he also has a reported $300 million guaranteed contract. Again, a little perspective. Scotty Scheffler, this year, with all the wins he's had, $26.5 million. And in his career, roughly 172. So way less than John Rahm has made in just a couple of years. And the numbers, they sound absurd. So you might be thinking, LIV has to be in some trouble, right? Are they going to go out of business, Gordon? How can you afford to lose this kind of money? It's like they're setting the money on fire and they're trending in the wrong direction. Well, here's the twist. None of it matters. The money does not matter. LIV Golf was never about making money. It was never about making a profit. The Public Investment Fund, which is run by the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, has nearly $925 billion in assets. It is expected to top $1 trillion next year. So losing $500 million on golf, not going to be a problem. That's like the money you lose in your couch cushions each year. So LIV isn't a business venture. It never was. It's never going to be. It is a branding operation. What does that mean? Well, it's sports washing. They are using global sports to soften Saudi Arabia's image and kind of distract from its records on, human rights, repressing free speech, jailing people who disagree with them, committing human right abuses like the murder of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi. And this is all well known. This was brought up when LIV first started and they hired Greg Norman to be their CEO. He and the players had to answer these questions about joining this tour with this is where the money's coming from. And Norman, one of the great lines of all time, said, well, we all made mistakes. Saudi Arabia, they just want to move forward. Yeah. So look, LIV is not about making money. They could fire $1,000 bills into an open fire. They don't care. It's not about the lost money. And just so you know, it's not just about LIV Golf. The Saudis have gone all in on entertainment. You might have seen stories about this comedy festival, the Riyadh Comedy Festival that they've done this year. It's an event featuring biggest names in comedy, Dave Chappelle, Kevin Hart, Louis C.K., Sebastian Maniscalco, a whole bunch of others. And those appearances have not come without backlash. Many of the comedians who have built, their reputations talking about, I'm an authentic person and it's all about free speech and I'm going to talk truth to power. And now they're taking checks from the Saudi government that is going to dwarf anything that they have made in their life for a single appearance. So there was one comedian, I can't remember his name. I tried to find it, but he did a whole TikTok series about, he had accepted the money and then because of the backlash backed out. And he was complaining the money he lost from backing out, he'll now have to do an additional 40 shows. So that tells you, 40 more shows, tells you how much he was getting paid or overpaid without having the actual numbers. So the irony in this is kind of, it's a thick one. And the comedians, the mental gymnastics that they have done to justify taking this enormous check, knowing where it's coming from, that has been more entertaining probably than the comedy festival. And that event, again, the comedy festival, not about making money. It's not about making a profit. And the trail of money is not going to stop there. It's going to continue. This is going to be a continuing thing. Remember like a month ago, there was a story about Tom Brady flag football game in 2026. That's funded by the PIF. It's a made-for-TV event in Saudi Arabia. Brady's going to be there. Saquon's going to be there. Odell Beckham, Pete Carroll, bunch of coaches. I think Kyle Shanahan's going to be there. Now, the initial reports were that Brady was going to get paid $75 million for that one game. Now, he denied that number. But you know that the number is probably obscene for one football game. Keep in mind, Tom Brady has a reported net worth of about $300 million. He has a Fox contract for $375. He might not be getting paid $75 million for the game, but that's probably in the ballpark. They are getting huge sums of money. That's why they're taking it. And it's funny because the comedians got a ton of heat. The athletes, I haven't seen any blowback. All I saw was, well, Tom Brady's going to be playing football again. So don't forget, this is just going to keep happening. There was a story about EA Sports, the video game maker. They were bought out by the PIF for $55 billion. So are you seeing a trend here? Yeah, this is going to continue to happen in the arts and especially in sports, which raises the question, like, why would these guys who are already worth hundreds of millions of dollars, they're global icons in a lot, they're household names in a lot of cases, why would they agree to this? Well, the answer is simple. And Ted DiBiase told us, everybody's got a price. Even Tom Brady, even the comedians who tell you that they're bastions of free speech and they won't quiet. At some point, there's going to be a number that's just too much to turn down. When it comes to a number that's 10 times, 20 times, 40 times what you would normally make, it gets harder to say no. Now, the people have taken the money, and it's funny, you hear the backlash. To me, I always say, you don't get to make a deal with the devil and then complain about the heat. You knew what the deal was going in. That's why they offered it to you. You could have turned it down. You didn't have to. You took the money, so there's no complaining about the backlash. So back to LIV, the LIV Golf. They're hemorrhaging money. But again, they don't care because it's not about being profitable or creating a good product or challenging, the old ways of the PGA Tour. They might present it that way, but it's uncomfortable. It's about something far bigger. It's about power, and it's about getting away with certain things because you have infiltrated the space where it seems acceptable. And they're going to be able to do that because of the line that Ted DiBiase told us way back when. Everybody's got a price. All right, let's get into what's going on in New York sports right now. And honestly, you wonder why I want to talk about topics outside of New York sport. I mean, could it get any worse? The two football teams, the Jets and Giants, it's like they're in a competition to see who is worse. And what's clear is both of their seasons, again, are over before Halloween. And then you have the Yankees on the brink of elimination heading into Game 3 of their division series tonight against the Blue Jays, who have completely outclassed them so far. And the biggest reason why, we got to talk about it is Aaron Judge. When you talk about the baseball and you talk about the Yankees' failures in October, lots of things will come up. A lot of things have come up in this series so far. And one of the storylines that I've heard in the last 24, 48 hours is, are the Yankees wasting Aaron Judge's prime? The Athletic had a story on it. I think it was from Ken Rosenthal. SNY was talking about it. Are the Yankees wasting Aaron Judge's prime? And I simply think to myself, Aaron Judge is wasting Aaron Judge's prime. Now, before you get too ticked off, Aaron Judge, to be clear, Aaron Judge, credible player. He's the best hitter in baseball right now, one of the greatest hitters we have all ever seen in our lifetimes. But in October, he has repeatedly shrunk in the spotlight. Any Yankee fan who has been paying attention knows this. Year in and year out, the Yankee offense does not perform like the Yankee regular season offense. And every October, Judge vanishes. And while he's not the only culprit, when you are the big bopper, you're the big guy who are the multiple-time MVP, you're the one who's going to get the most attention. And when the Yankees are facing better teams, or teams at least that are as good as them, they always get bounced. Since 2021, Judge has a 706 OPS in the postseason with a negative win probability added. So you think about that. Their best player hurts their odds of winning when they need him the most. That's not just a narrative. That is just simple math. And you can't prove what's going on inside a player's head, but I think Jack Curry brought it up the other day. His chase rate increases in October by 6%. So that kind of tells you something. It tells you that he's pressing, he's expanding the zone, and he's abandoning the approach that makes him elite during the regular season. And we saw it back in game one on that swing, 3-2 full count, bases loaded, game one, Yanks down 2-0. That was the moment. That was the chance to silence the critics and to flip the series. And maybe it wouldn't have ended the conversation, but at least people who are Judge fans could have pointed to that moment as evidence. No, this guy, he does deliver in October. And this is the reputation of the Aaron Boone Yankees. They're fine playing weaker teams, but when the team is as good as they are, it's a different story. They lose. They melt in the spotlight. Since 2017, the Yankees have only beaten one higher-seeded team in the postseason. And not surprisingly, it was the Cleveland Guardians back, maybe in 2017, might have been still the Indians. Whatever. It's a continuing trend. And the Blue Jays don't only just have them in an 0-2 hole, they have completely destroyed them through 2 games. And it certainly seems like, barring something dramatic, it's going to be another short October. And look, this is not all on Aaron Judge. He's not the only one who disappears when the lights get bright, but the Yankee lineup as a whole goes quiet in the postseason, and he's a big reason why. And don't tell me about they're 2 home run dependent. You need to hit home runs in October. We've gone through this time and time again. If you don't believe it, that's up to you. The numbers are the numbers. You have to hit home runs, and you need your best player to be your best player. He has to rise above the noise, and Judge has not done that. Right now, the comparison people have made, he's the Lamar Jackson of baseball. Phenomenal regular season player, MVP talent, but when it really matters, he is not a guy who's going to come through. He's a completely different guy. So, no, to answer the question, the Yankees are not wasting Aaron Judge's prime. They've spent the most money in the American League. They've built a roster that on paper should be able to compete for a World Series. And the truth is, one of the biggest things holding them back is their best player. There's no other way around that. So, look, I don't want to get too carried away. Sports are weird. Baseball is weird. Maybe the Yankees fight in Game 3 and force a Game 4. Maybe Aaron Judge goes out there and has the game that we've all been waiting for. But that Game 1, bases loaded, down 2-0, that might go down as the moment where this entire Yankee season was defined. Because until Aaron Judge proves that he can be the guy in October, the Yankees are not going to get to where they want to be, and that is with winning another World Series. And he, most importantly, he is never going to hear the end of it until he performs. It's the narrative until the narrative changes. All right, let's get into the football, because with the Giants, another thing that's a wrap. Brian Daboll, it's a wrap, folks. I don't expect anybody to be shocked or disappointed and all that stuff. That loss to the Saints, that was the final nail in the coffin. And at this point, it's more nails than coffin. I mean, what are we doing? And I like Jackson Dart. I think he's talented. It's only 2 games. We've got a whole season to watch him. It's the only thing to watch about the Giants at this point. I think he's going to be a good quarterback, but he does not need Brian Daboll to make that happen. And I love when people say, well, if you change the coach, it could stunt his growth. Why would that stunt his growth? Why would bringing in a better head coach stunt his growth? What exactly is Brian Daboll? I think he's winning in spite of Brian Daboll. Brian Daboll's not the offensive coordinator. He's the head coach of the team, and he's a terrible head coach. The numbers tell you all you need to know. He's now 19-36-1. Last year, they had a 10-game losing streak, which is the longest in franchise history. Their offensive ranks every single year is terrible. I think they're 28th or 29th so far this year. And through 5 games, they have the second most penalties in the NFL. What more do I need to see? Sunday marked the 20th time under Daboll that the Giants scored under 21 points in a road game. That is I think the 3rd highest total since 2022. You can't be the worst team in football year in and year out. The Giants are 1-4 now. Eagles, Broncos, Eagles. Next 3 weeks. It's over. It's a wrap. And it was always unlikely that Brian Daboll was going to survive this. But to me, it's not even a conversation. It's not a debate anymore. He's got to go. And Joe Shane, don't let the door hit you where the good Lord splits you. What has that guy done? It seems like all the focus is on Daboll. The only success they've had is the first year when they were winning with Dave Gettleman's players. The Giants are the worst team in their division. They're one of the worst teams in football, period, year in and year out. Do you realize that Brian Daboll's win percentage is lower than Robert Sala's? It's lower than Adam Gase's. It's lower than Rich Kotite's. And it's only going to get worse. The only question to me is, when does he get fired? It's certainly happening at the very least after the season, if not before. All right, let's move on to the Jets, who are somehow amazingly even worse. I mean, there were a lot of questions about Aaron Glenn coming in, but there was a lot of optimism. The questions remain. They only grow, but the optimism, that left town a long time ago. And people are, can the Jets actually go 0-17? Could he get fired in year one? Well, here's the thing. He has time to turn this around. It is only year one. But to me, this is the real issue. If you're a Jet fan who's crying for him to get fired or think he should, do you trust Woody Johnson to find a better replacement? Is he going to hire another first-time head coach if he lets go Glenn? Because if that's the case, I have no confidence that Woody Johnson could find a coach if he fell on his head. If the coach fell out of the sky and landed on Woody Johnson. Now, if Mike Tomlin gets fired or John Harbaugh gets fired, and for some reason, I don't know why, maybe they have a concussion, they want to coach the Jets, okay, get Glenn out and bring somebody else in. The other thing, don't think this is rock bottom. The worst thing you can think with the Jets is this is rock bottom. And the longest running American sitcom, non-animated sitcom, was The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet. The Jets are now the longest running American sitcom. They are about to miss the playoffs for the 15th straight year. 15 years in a row. And the bar was so low for Glenn coming in. All he had to do was act like he knew what he was doing. And so much for that. So much for that. And all the optimism. Oh, he got Aaron Rodgers out of here. His offense just put up 3 points at home against the worst team in the NFL in the first half. His specialty, Aaron Glenn's specialty, is defense. They get torched every week. They can't cover anybody, but they make up for it by not tackling anybody either. And it's not like Detroit's missing him. I mean, it's just another disaster for an organization that all they do is disaster. And then Monday night, they lose to the Dolphins. Glenn goes in there and chews them all out. And then what happens on Sunday? They look worse against Dallas. Just absolutely brutal. So yeah, when it comes to New York football, season's already over. Start looking ahead to the draft, people, because Brian Daboll's time is just about up. The decision's been made. The check is in the mail. It's just a matter of when somebody opens it. And then Aaron Glenn, I don't think he's going to get fired in year one, but you got to win some games, man. Meet me halfway across the sky, as Kenny Loggins would sing. You got to bring something to the table, because right now, for all the bad head coaches that the Jets have had here during this run, right now, you're the worst. None of them went 0-5. You did. The first-time head coach, a first year that he started 0-5. Do you know how hard it is to be the worst at something in New York Jets history? It's really, really hard. And somehow Aaron Glenn has done it. So it's not a good season for either the Jets or the Giants. The only thing left now is the draft. I don't know. Start Googling mock drafts, people, because that's all you got to look forward to on Sundays.
Remember college? Well, now, college is over, and here comes your student loan debt. Is your private student loan debt keeping you up at night? You really need to talk to YRefi. YRefi refinances distressed or defaulted private student loans that others won't touch. They can save you thousands of dollars and get you a custom payment that you can afford. And they don't care what your credit score is. Don't let private student loan debt ruin your life. Call YRefi today.
All right, finally, I have never been a college football guy. Didn't go to a school. I went to St. John's, which was a basketball school. Never went to a school, never got into it. College football really is not a New York thing. But you know, something has happened over the last year that has gotten me to pay more attention to one specific program than any before. And I'm actually a fan of watching what's going on with them. And that would be the University of North Carolina. Because Bill Belichick's first year, when the hiring of Bill Belichick That was one of the more shocking announcements I think we've had in a while. When you first heard that Bill Belichick was going to college and coaching, it was one of the, as sports fans, so often you always have an opinion, right? Right or wrong, sports fans have opinions. If it's trades, if it's firings or hirings or games. When Belichick got hired by North Carolina, I don't know if we really knew what to expect. And that move, it felt like it could run the range of outcomes. It could be a brilliant move if he really reinvents himself, or it could be a fiasco. And on the positive side, it was kind of set like Deion Sanders type situation, right? Huge personality comes in, huge profile, flips the roster, draws people in, draws a national attention, and could the ability to turn things around overnight is there. It felt at least possible, especially in the world that we live in college football now, where rebuilding doesn't take 5 years. It basically takes 5 minutes. Between the transfer portal and NIL money, you can really turn things around quickly. And there are examples of that. I'm not a college football fan, but you can look at them. The problem is that patience is shorter than ever before. So either you're going to win now or you're going to be gone now. The NFL is not for long. College football is the same way. So how good is Bill's first year going in college? Oh, boy. Right now, the early returns are in, and they could not possibly be worse. On Saturday, they got just boat raced by Clemson, 38-10. Clemson was up 28-3 after the first quarter. It looked like a glorified spring game. It took Clemson 9 plays to score 21 points. And by the time the third quarter started, it was like God picked up the stadium and shook it. Everybody left. There were more people on the sidelines than in the stands. That's how bad it was. And if it was just one game, you say, all right, well, Tar Heels have now played 3 games against Power 4 opponents. They've lost by 34, 25, and 28. No matter how bad you thought it could be, and some people thought it was going to be bad, I don't know that anybody thought it was going to be this. It went from hype train to train wreck overnight. Now, they're trying to spin control. Their GM, Mike Lombardi, sent a letter to boosters saying, you got to have patience on this. We got a long-term plan. We're going to sign the double amount of the recruiting class or something like that. He pointed to other programs. It took them a long time to build up there. The problem is that's not how the sport works anymore. NIL changed it's no longer about building slowly. It's about spending money and producing now. I want it now. And nothing that Belichick or Lombardi or any of the people he's brought in suggests they have any real clue on how to build a college program in 2025. Maybe that's just what they're saying about patience to the boosters to keep them engaged. But they couldn't even keep their best players from last season. And it's hard to ask for patience when your coach is 73 years old and seems like he's clearly out of touch with how the game works now, especially with his approach. Belichick has always had his approach. It's always been his way or the highway, right? The Patriot way. He would get rid of a guy who did not fit the mold. And college football players now, they have more power than ever before. And it requires Bill Belichick to completely reinvent himself. And that has not happened. And the truth is, Belichick needed North Carolina way more than North Carolina needed Bill Belichick. At the end of the day, the NFL did not want him. The league had moved on. He was not getting another opportunity there. And he wanted to coach somewhere. And now it seems like North Carolina is kind of stuck with him. He's way overpaid. He's getting $10 million a season. He's completely out of his element. And his reputation is dying every single day. And, of course, he has the whole off-the-field girlfriend situation, which is not helping. So, honestly, I'll admit it. For me, this has been delicious. Oh, it has been sports porn. It is sports karma, watching this arrogant, controlling guy just getting humbled week after week. Oh, it's fantastic. It doesn't seem possible. I don't really believe in karma, but this is karma, man. And the bottom line is Bill Belichick is trying to run North Carolina the same way he ran those Patriots. And when you win, that works, right? His program, his rules, that type of stuff. He expects players to fall in line and buy into his system. That's a really bad fit for college football now. You got to be, the players have real power through NIL and the transfer and all that type of stuff. They can pick up and leave if they don't like how they've been treated. So the sport, college football, has completely evolved. And what you've seen here, at least in year one, is Bill Belichick has not evolved. And a big part of this disaster is Belichick's, like his pettiness. There was a report that, according to sources inside the program, that there was a directive from the program, meaning Belichick, he's running the whole show. Players and staff were not allowed to tweet or retweet anything Patriots related because of his breakup with Robert Kraft. I mean, that just shows you the level of pettiness. Think about that for a second. For a while, they didn't post anything about Drake May's win against the Bills. They eventually did because clearly somebody found out about this and said, wait a second, we're not. But you'd think that Belichick's whole thing, if it's going to be successful, it would be, hey, I'm Bill Belichick, NFL legend. Come here. I will get you NFL ready, more so than anybody else. And that would convince players in the future, long-term thinking, right? And he's apparently also reports are he's kept NFL scouts from attending practices. He wants to put a muzzle on the social media stuff. Again, that is not going to work in 2025. You can't be the same control-obsessed Bill Belichick from New England in the world that college football is now. It comes off to outsiders as insecure and small, and it's going to turn off players as well. Now, the university seems to have stepped in after the whole thing with the Bills game and Drake May. But, like in terms of Belichick, the damage is done. And on every level, it's embarrassing. So again, when you're winning, you get to do that. When you're winning, Bill Belichick can do whatever he wants. He certainly did in New England. But when you're not, and you're getting your heads handed to you every single week, and I'm not the only one enjoying this. The media, they have been waiting for this for years. The arrogance, the smarter than you act, the bully act, just classless, so many times classless. So there is going to be a piling on. And I guess I'm guilty of that as well. And it's going to be massive because people have been waiting this for a long time. But honestly, that is the least of Bill Belichick's problems right now. That is the least of his problems. The bad press is not the real issue. It seems like the game has completely passed him by, and he's trying to run a program in college football in 2025 like he ran the Patriots in 2001. And that is, I don't know much about college football. You can ask anybody who does. They know that is not going to work. That is a formula for failure. And really, at this point, the biggest upset that Bill Belichick could be part of this season is if he survives his first season at North Carolina, especially considering there's still more games to go, and it doesn't look like it's going to get better anytime soon. All right, that is going to do it for another episode of Gordon Damer on Sports. If you've not already, please hit that subscribe button, like the episode, rate the episode, whatever you can do to help the episode get boosted a little bit. It would certainly be appreciated. Share it with a friend if you know somebody who likes a good sports podcast. And even if they don't like it, send them this one. See if they like this one. How can it hurt? Maybe you'll lose a friend in the process. Who knows? But that's going to do it for another episode. Episode number 45. We'll be back later this week. Hopefully the Yankees are still alive in the postseason, although I doubt it. Right here on Gordon Damer on Sports.